Greetings! My name is Turadin and hold up a second. That's better. Yeah, let's not waste any more time and get right into it. So about 16 godzillion years ago, you had this place called the Lands Between, where stuff was pretty dope. You had cool trees, cool people, these big fiery dudes, and even the most fantastical thing of them all, equality. Until one day God, or rather one of the gods, because there are quite a lot of the buggers, called the Greater Will, saw all the cool stuff happening down there and really wanted a piece of the action. So he yeeted a big ol' meteor down there carrying his pet lizard, who then proceeded to grow this big old tree called the Earth Tree, which became kind of a pretty big deal as it was A, pretty big, B, really pretty, and C, served as a convenient nightlight so you could read books in the later hours of the day without having to worry about the prices of energy these days. Oh, and it also created this glowing pretzel called the Eldenring. It was like really cool and had all the laws of the universe inside of it or something. I don't know, it's not really that important. But back to the Greater Will. It had a bit of a problem in that as an incorporeal divine force, it couldn't really do much to directly communicate with the normies down below. And its pet lizard couldn't do much either with his scalery, slippery lizard hands. So he both needed someone to work as its glorified telephone and also someone who could do some errands for it, like run to the shop and buy some cigarettes or something. To these ends he created these thingies called the Two Fingers. Really putting that writing prowess on display, George me old mate, who had access to magic Skype, as well as marking several people it thought were pretty cool as Empyreans, which are sort of one day maybe to be gods. One of these being this happy-go-lucky gal called Marika, the not yet not quite eternal, who quite literally stomped the competition and thus got crowned as the top god. Which was overall a pretty sweet gig. Benefits include stable housing, health insurance, a furry shadow stand that is unable to betray you and will always follow every single one of your commands, and dental. You even get full dominance over all the lands. I mean, minus the few people who hated the Earth Tree and or posed a massive threat to Marika's rule, that is. Okay, actually, there are quite a lot of those. And it could always just like kill you. Yeah, we might want to do something about that. So first things first, that whole dying part. Now, you'd imagine that trying to conquer something as existential as death would be kind of a big deal. But it was actually the easier of the two, as that cool pretzel I mentioned earlier that carried all the laws of the universe also had a little piece saying that things die when they are killed. So Marika just sort of took it out and gave it to her furry shadow stand thingy Malekith to keep an eye on, since if it were ever stolen, things could get real nasty real quickie. Like, seriously, should really make sure that never happens. So now Marika and her offspring could no longer die, which was pretty tight, but you still had the issue of all the people who still very much wanted to give it a try anyway, screaming in your backyard. And what do you do to fix that? Easy! You just kill them first. Silly. However, while Marika is good at many things, including but not limited to defying the natural laws of the universe, one thing she couldn't do so well were suplexes. So she decided to pick up, seduce, kindly ask, fuck into submission this professional WWE wrestler called Hora Lu to help speed up the whole stabbing the people in your backyard business up a tad. And he did. He even decided to be a good husband, cleaned up his act a little, renamed himself Godfrey, started dressing a bit more proper, went fishing with his father-in-law, and becoming the first Elden Lord. Him and Marika even had 3 kids. Godwyn the Golden, whom everyone loved and was really pretty and really cool and just too darn perfect for this world. And 2 others that were cursed from birth to be really ugly, so no one really cared that much about them. Minus Godwyn. Godwyn cared about them, because Godwyn is a really cool dude and he loves his family no matter their looks. Be more like Godwyn. So from here on out, things proceeded pretty swimmingly. Mom and Dad went up north to spend their honeymoon body-slamming giants, while Godwyn the Great held down the fort and became best buds with dragons. He even built a soup kitchen, set up a kitten orphanage, and decided to legitimize people of all sexual orientations and genders. Godwyn says trans rights. I mean, honestly, things were going so swell, I doubt there was anything that could rain on their parade at this point. I mean, minus the wizards. So, Liurnia. It kinda sucks. It's really wet, there are loads of nasty lobsters, and it probably smells really bad. It's exactly the kind of place you'd go to live if you'd want no one to bother you ever. And even if you did, the place sucked so badly to live that you'd inevitably become a shut-in introvert. Which is exactly what this group of nerds did. But as it turns out, being inside and reading books all the time doesn't just tank your social skills, it also makes you really good at magic. Which was gonna be a bit of a problem. Not to mention this one really tall lady called Renala, who was the bestest at magic of them all. She was so good, in fact, that the nerds even made her their queen. For nerds are but simple creatures and react to any woman who shares their interest the same way moths do to a lit candle. Now, Godfrey and his mates loved a good fight, but being lasered with such weak beta moves like magic and tactics didn't really sound like a good time. So they moved on to funner things to stomp and instead left this one random dude who just showed up one day called Radagon to fuck the wizards up a tad. Which he did and took incredibly literally, as he and Renala got married and had 3 beautiful babies, each taking after their parents in a different way and each being a treasured little jewel of potential. These were Rani, who became a master of magic and was taught the arcane arts by her mother, Raikard, and Radan, who became a master of hitting people in the face really hard, repeatedly, until their face stopped resembling a face. And they lived on to form their own happy little family forevermore. But this is all boring and peaceful, so let's move on to something more manly and badass, like more fighting. So Godfrey fought this dude called the Storm Lord, and he hit him in the face like really hard. And the Storm Lord hit him back, and then they thought he was out, but he got back up and he hit the Storm Lord with his atomic leg drop and broke his spine. And then, as Godfrey stood upon the body of his defeated foe, now the strongest and most worthy warrior in the entire world, he got depressed. Because this meant he had no one left to fight, and no longer had an excuse to skip out on those PTA meetings. However, Marika was a supportive spouse, and she decided to help her husband through these difficult times by kicking him out and divorcing him. So he took all of his mates, who had also gotten depressed with him, called the Tarnished, hey, that's me, and just sort of left. So now Marika was in need of another boy toy, and her eyes eventually fell on none other than Radagon, who accepted his offer suspiciously quickly, leaving Renala alone with the kids and causing her to get very depressed as well, which then caused the nerds to betray her and lock her in the library. Thanks Marika, very cool. But he did promise to have them over every other weekend and even give his kiddos demigod power, since they were now technically the stepchildren of Marika.
Who you don't have to call mommy right away if you don't want to, but daddy would definitely appreciate it if you did.
But these weekends probably got real awkward real fast, seeing as how he and Marika immediately had 2 new kids called Malenia and Mikela, who were both cursed from birth. Now, where have we heard that before? I'm starting to think Marika might just have really shit genetics. But unlike the other 2, these 2 kiddos weren't all disgusting and malformed and stuff, but were cursed in ways that were arguably infinitely worse. Mikela was made to be forever young, which doesn't sound so bad until you realize he'd effectively be a toddler in a world with literal dragons, who have often been dubbed as the pit bulls of the fantasy world. And Malenia was cursed by one of the greater wills, rowdy cousins, to eternally be afflicted with scarlet rot, which is as self-explanatory as it is disgusting. However, back to the other kids, on top of becoming a semi-demigod, Rani was also deemed pretty neat by the greater will, and got marked down as an Empyrean in the greater will's little notebook, which she hated. Being a puppet for some divine jackass who indirectly caused your parents' divorce didn't exactly sound very fun for her. So she started looking into ways to escape the cards she was dealt by her dumbass of a dad. And what better way to do that than stir the pot a little. But this was no easy feat, as, unfortunately for her, there were plenty of immortal demigods in charge of things, with varying levels of competence, and you couldn't really get rid of them either due to Marika's whole stealing the pretzel of death thingy. I mean, unless someone were to steal a piece of that pretzel piece, and thus gain the ability to bestow true death on whoever they wished, which would be a massive disaster, the consequence of which could potentially uproot the entire order of the world. Gee, wouldn't that be awful? So this pretzel piece mysteriously found its way to this bunch of totally trustworthy Nazgul cosplayers called the Black Knife Assassins, who took it, turned it into London's favorite pastime, and immediately used it to shank Godwin the Gorgeous and also Rani, sort of. we'll get back to that some other time. Understandably, losing her perfect baby boy kind of upset Marika a tad, and she got so pissed that she smashed the Elden pretzel into a million teeny tiny breadcrumbs, which the Greater Will truly appreciated, and thanked her accordingly for her troubles. So now the house of cards holding the entire system in place has collapsed in on itself in something very appropriately called the Shattering, and it's everyone's game. Demigod is fighting demigod, everyone is scrambling for a piece of the pretzel. Some folks get a bit too much into their Japanese cartoons, and Radagon is completely missing. A bit weird that in it. It's chaos, it's a mess. Someone's gotta clean it all up, and boy howdy am I glad it's not me. Wait.